Okay.
Okay, we're recording now. You can start now.
All righty. This is slide 51, the last one we did last week. And this one and the next one are incredibly important. I just spend one slide on things sometimes because it can be said in one slide, but they're really important. Each calendar, this is worth reviewing again. Each calendar, which tracks a celestial object, has a, quote, uniform, quote, version, which never has leap days and does not actually track the planet or the celestial object at all. Uniform calendars are useful to celebrate holy days, which are usually seasonal, like Easter, for similar events at other times of the year.
John, you say they don't track the planet, but the number of days is determined by the celestial object, I assume.
Exactly. So Venus, the real planet, takes 583.92 days for a cycle. So every cycle, this will get off by by more than a day. And so it'll be several days off after a while. And so the real Venus calendar will correct it by 13 days. It's based on the Trecina. So it'll correct it so it still follows it. The period is so long that a few days either way, 4 or 5, 6 days either way, is close enough to see the object. By the way, Venus is now rising as a morning star. I haven't really gone out to look, but it's right at the time of its resurrection. But the uniform always has 585 days. So after a few years, it'll get completely out of sync. And that's not its purpose. That's the important concept. The purpose is to do a Venus-like calendar that can be used any time of the year. I shouldn't say I know what the purpose is, but as I look at how the Lord seems to be using it, it appears that way, that those kinds of events, like Mars has a begin retrograde and a begin, which is like a backsliding time. It's like the adult natural man is born, you're going backwards, you're sinning, and then it has a new birth. And so in people's lives, they can do a backsliding. This applied, for instance, to Martin Harris when, I have to look it up now, but there's something there when they start, when he loses the pages, they start backsliding, and the Urim and Thummim's taken away from Joseph Smith, and it's taken away for something like 78 days, which is the backsliding period, and then it's given back, and they can start moving forward again. That is a perfect regression and rebirth event, but it may not happen when Mars is actually doing that. And so this provides another calendar where that can be done. An important thing here is it's going to link to the next slide. All of these then, a uniform Enoch. So when I say there's 16 sacred calendars, nearly half of them, it's not quite 8, but I think it is 6. It might be these 6. These 6 have a uniform version. So once you learn one of the calendars, you've really learned both. So just so people don't get discouraged, you learn 2 for 1 on all of these. So the uniform always has 364 for the ones based on the week, and always has a multiple of 13 for the ones based on 13, Mercury, Venus, and Mars. Now, putting that together, and then go to the next slide, 52. This one slide, in my mind, ought to get rid of all of the atheists in the group. If somebody really thinks about what this is saying, the way atheism works, the whole foundation of the theory of evolution and no creator, no God, is that everything is random, except, okay, there may be some laws of the universe. So scientists, atheist scientists, believe in the laws of motion and Newton's laws, etc. But when it comes to the period of the planets, any astronomy book will say, well, they're all just random. They're just random numbers, whatever, when the solar system formed, whatever residual angular momentum they had, that's what the periods are. So no time is spent learning periods of planets in astronomy classes, especially since they're measured relative to the sun. All of the ones that are important are relative to the Earth and sun lining up with the planet, like Venus rising in the east right now. See, that's the period. That's 584 days is from Venus heliacal rising, resurrection to Venus resurrection. With that in mind, look at how all these numbers tie together. The uniform Mercury and Venus calendar is exactly a factor of 5. 5 uniform Mercury cycles of 117 days equals exactly one 585-day period. In other words, 5 times 117 is 585. So Mercury and Venus are forever linked exactly like gears in a wheel. That's why I draw this. By the way, I had the artist count the teeth in these wheels. So there's 9 teeth in this little Mercury wheel. And each tooth is 13 days. So 9 times 13, that's 117. And there's 45 teeth in this one. Anyway, I try, it's an accurate picture. The next one, 3 times the sacred round, is the period of Mars. So the sacred round is what I said the whole solar system is based on. We've studied that calendar we have gone through and learned. Mars, the Mars cycle is exactly 3 sacred rounds. And this one is 2 within a fraction of a day. The real answer is 779 point, and it's something like 57/63 or something like that. It's really close. It's so close that 780 days lasts for hundreds of years before it needs a correction of 13 days. But look at that, it's exactly 3. And so now you've got, that means, well, when you do this, it's going to be, well, let's just keep going. They all interlock like gears is the point. You don't need to memorize every one, but 7 sacred rounds is 5 years of either Enoch, Jubilee, or star years, 1,820 days. 13 priest cycles. So we've studied the priest cycle, 168 days. Comes out exactly 6 times 6 years of those years. Here's the big one, the 2 big years. 4 times the Venus period is 3 times the Mars period. So these 2 big years have 45 teeth and 60 teeth. They're a ratio of 4 to 3. And this is awesome. This is amazing. These are the real planets in the solar system. This is not randomness. This one slide should prove creation as far as I'm concerned, because they really are gears in a clock. And so when they write the blind watchmaker pro-evolution, anti-God book, you know, so somebody ought to write. I'm so busy doing this, I don't have time to fool with atheists, but it was all designed. That's the whole point of this slide. And so there is another use of these uniform calendars, is that they sync up so that a lot of times you'll have a holy day on Venus and Mercury and Mars all together, and it's because they're designed to line up. It's not random. All right, that's a lot of time on that slide, but these are the real periods of the real planets which can be looked up. They're called synodic periods. I don't put a slide on that because that's extra credit. The periods listed in astronomy books are sidereal periods, which don't have these relationships. Okay, next slide, 53. Okay, now we have finished 2 calendars. We've looked at the priest calendar, and we have looked at the sacred round, which to me is the most important. Now, we're going to go to the Book of Enoch and the Enoch calendar for the next slides. And we should get pretty well into this today. The Book of Enoch used to be in the Bible. It was taken out by the Council of Nicaea because it had a lot of weird stuff in it that they didn't understand, and it bothered them. Actually, I understand that they flipped a coin between taking out the Book of Revelation and the Book of Enoch, and Revelation's in, which is tough to understand, and Enoch is out. But it was discovered in Ethiopia. It was in their Bible right after the Book of Job, discovered back in late 1700s, as I recall, translated by Archbishop Lawrence into English in 1821. That's still the best translation. The modern people have newer translations, and they did not understand the astronomy at all, and they just destroyed it. So it's much worse. And for all the astronomy, maybe some. I have all the most of the translations, but the old Lawrence one, it's really cheap. You can get a copy of this for $8 somewhere. It's free online in my on my website, Book of Enoch. But it talks about 7 chapters of a 90 chapter book. 7 or 8 chapters is all about a calendar. Next slide. 54. Oh yes, Christ quoted, just to know how authentic it is. Christ quoted the Book of Enoch more than any other scripture. It was believed to have written by the prophet Enoch. For instance, Jude, which only has 1 chapter, verse 14. That's where he says, Enoch, the 7th from Adam. It's prophesied that the Lord will return with these 10,000 of hosts. He's quoting Jude, who is the brother of Christ, Judas, the half-brother of Christ, is believed to be the author of that. He quotes it directly in the Bible. At the beginning of my first paper on the Book of Enoch, I think I've got about something like 15 or 20 quotes, which Jesus said, and they're right out of the Book of Enoch. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. That's Matthew 5:5, Sermon on the Mount, and almost identical in Enoch 6, verse 9. So people don't realize how much he quoted it. So if you look up scholarly evidence, they'll say, oh, this is a pseudepigraphal book, which he written about 200 BC. And you say, how do you know that? They say, oh, well, it prophesies things that happen, and we don't believe in prophets. And so it was obviously written after things had been fulfilled, which means it was written after 200 BC. So that's how scholars date. That's how they come up with 3 versions of Isaiah, because they don't believe that he could actually prophesy anything. So there's scholars for you. Anyway, let's move on. Page 55. Book of Enoch describes the solar calendar for 8 chapters revealed by the angel Uriel, or Uriel, however you say that. And the Qumran Society of the Dead Sea, they used it. They did not like the moon. The Enoch calendar is, as I say here, it's a solar calendar. So it almost only follows the sun. And the Qumran troops, which were probably the Essenes, said, they felt like this was the calendar before Israel went into Babylon Judah actually goes to Babylon. And when they come back, they have this lunar calendar. And the Essenes thought that was wrong. So they go out to have their own society. And they did their best to have the calendar of Qumran based on the Book of Enoch. I think they got it wrong, but they did their best. 56 slide number. All right, this is what is described in those 7 chapters. It's very simple. The 364 days divides evenly by 4. So there's 4 quarters with 91 days each. That's 3 months with 30 days each. So see, there's no tracking of the moon here, just straight 30 days. 30, 30, 30, 30, 12 months altogether with 30 days. That's 360 days. And then there's 4 special days, which are the equinoxes when in spring and fall, when the sun rises and sets due east. And then the summer and winter solstice when the sun is farthest north and farthest south. 91 days is divisible by 7, and 91-day quarters. Every quarter, it's divisible by 7. So, I think that'll probably be the next slide. Go to 57. No, let's go back to 50. I didn't look ahead much. Go back to 56 and I'll say it here and then it'll probably be repeated. The first day of every quarter is a Sunday. 91 is also divisible by 7, the week. So every quarter is 13 weeks. 13 times 7 is 91. There's 13 weeks in a quarter, 52 weeks in a year. The first day of spring is always a Sunday. First day of every season is a Sunday. And every equinox or solstice day is always a Saturday. It's the last. And this is an example of the last is the first and the first is the last, because the vernal equinox, technically it's the 31st day of late winter, but it's called zero spring. It's not the first day of spring, it's the 0th day of spring. All of these calendars have the concept of a 0, and a 0 is like the last of the old and the first of the next. And we have this same thing. For instance, the year 2000, when did the 21st century start? Well, there's a year 2000 that ends in a 0, and then there's a year 2001 that has a 1. Well, the year 2000 for the purists was technically in the last century. It went from 1901 to and included 2000. And technically 2001 starts it, the new century. But everybody wanted to party in what year? Not 2001. They want to party in 2000 because that's when all the zeros line up. So we do the same thing. 0. The 0 day is really the 0th day of the next year, and the equinox is called 0 spring. It's never called 31 late winter. Okay, with that in mind, go to the next slide. Those are 4 special holy days. Every few years, an extra whole week is added to late winter to sync up the Enoch year with the seasons. And so it's very simple in that one spring, that's the first day of the year. It's always on a Sunday, and that Sunday is usually the Sunday on or after the 20th of March, which is the equinox. So that's how the Enoch year syncs up with the year. And it's about every 5 years. It's 1 1/4 days short every year. 364 is 1 1/4 short of 365 1/4. So after 5 years, it's short by 5 days plus 1/4 of 5, which is a couple. So it's about a week short every 5 years. The slide also says the Enoch year usually begins when the sun first rises just north of east on a Sunday morning in the spring. Yeah, same idea. That's a city. The picture is a street in New York where the sun is rising at the end. It's not an east-west street, but hey, that's the idea that this is, oh, it's worth commenting on this. So in temples and things on this day, on when sun rises due east, they would have a long corridor, and the light would go down a shaft and light up something on the far end of a wall. And that only happened on one day per year. And so it's a really nice way to have symbolism of starting a new year. Okay, next slide, 58. Now, this is really important, and this is going to be through all of these calendars. Even the star calendar, which is just, my next paper is going to be on this with the star calendar, and I didn't even suspect it. So this is all, a lot of new things are happening with the star calendar. Many of the major holy days in the Enoch calendar correspond to days on the Hebrew calendar. Now, we haven't even discussed Hebrew calendar, so that will be discussed later. But just to let you be familiar with the names, the Hebrew calendar has a New Year's Day, it has a day of consecration. Passover, you've probably all heard of. There's an Easter Sunday right on the Hebrew calendar, but the Jews are not aware of it, which is kind of hilarious in a way. There's the last day of Passover. Passover is a week long. The big thing in the spring is the week of Passover. And then 7 weeks after Easter Sunday is First Fruits, which is always on a Sunday on the corrected Hebrew calendar. The Hebrews don't they don't do that, but they should. The Sadducees did it. The Pharisees didn't, and the modern Hebrews followed the Pharisees, not the Sadducees. And then the solstice and spring equinox. And in the fall, there's a Feast of Trumpets and there's a Day of Atonement, but the big party is Tabernacles. And again, it's a week-long celebration. Oh, and they have mostly the same numbers. On the Hebrew calendar, Tabernacles is from the 15th of autumn to the 22nd of autumn. On the Enoch, it's the 14th through the 21st. But there's a reason for that. They don't start at the same time of day. The Enoch calendar, oh, excuse me, these two do. There's still a reason for it. I'll tell you the reason. Passover and Tabernacles are always on a Saturday, on a holy day, on the Enoch calendar. That's why they don't change days of the week. Just like the first day of a month is always a Sunday of a month, meaning the quarter, like spring and autumn. And the 14th is always a Saturday, 2 weeks later. So that's why they're 10 and 14 and 10, whereas actually the more correct, if you will, is the 15 and 22, but they're both correct for what calendar they're on. Anyway, sometimes there's a one-day difference between the Hebrew and the Enoch, but the Enoch calendar has all of these holy days. Let's just look at 59. We've now used our time up for the first half. And okay, that's a good place to, we'll go on starting from there if we have enough questions. Otherwise, we might go on from here, but let's stop now, the first half. And I have not received, that I am aware of, I was out of town for a little while, but as I looked back through my emails, I don't believe I received any questions by email. So if anybody has any questions now on anything we've covered or anything at all to do with this whole subject, now is the time to ask.
Okay, so John, if you'll go to your chat box, do you see at the bottom?
Oh, wait a minute. I can't even find my... Wait a minute, I can't even find the
Window.
Yeah, the little window. Let me just a sec. Give me a sec. Let me make.
You get out of full screen mode. That's what messes me up.
Yeah, I am in, and I'm trying to see where is the out of full screen mode thing, because it went over here on the right maybe. I don't see the get
Hit
out
escape
of.
button.
Hit the escape button.
Yeah, hit the escape button.
I have hit the escape button and
Did it not do it?
that did not. Oh, wait a minute. Here we go. Chat, share, invite, record. That stuff's at the bottom. We got 7 participants.
Yeah, so go to the chat and then you'll see some questions from Russell.
I don't. Why don't you just ask him? And
I'll just ask my question.
Sure.
So the linking is true for the uniform calendars. Is that what defines a uniform calendar? In the fact that they're
No. No. What defines the uniform calendar is that they never insert any leap days, and they're defined independent. They're not defined to be dependent on any other calendar. It's just that you never correct them with a leap period.
Okay, but the numbers of the cycle aren't based on the planets themselves. They're off by 1 or 2 to make it into a uniform calendar, and then as a uniform calendar, they link perfectly.
Right, but they're not. The reason for the days, the reason that the 3 are all based on the week is the periods come out very, very close to even in weeks. For instance, a year is about 52 weeks. We say that in common parlance, 52-week year. Well, it's really a day off, but it's 52 weeks. And the same with the others, they're weeks. The Venus, Mercury, and Mars don't come out even in weeks. They come out very, very close to even in Tricinus of 13 days. That's why they're based on the Tricina. It's because that's the best unit mathematically you can show. That's the best unit to base them on. And then this is how I look at it. And so you have this uniform version that never inserts the leap days. And then it, quote, just happens, quote, that they all come out even. Now, you might say, well, it was done purposely to make them come out even, but that it wasn't. I had no idea. I was shocked at the discovery that was shown in that one slide of how all of them come out even. That was the whole paper on how the solar system appears to be created by according to these calendars, which is what the Mayans believed.
That kind of gets back to my other question, and maybe this has been asked and answered already, but have you explained how you knew the Lord was using these calendars? Is it because the universe fits it?
No, it's because all of the holy days fit it. And it was, oh boy, it was a step line upon line. I had no idea any of this existed at first. And well, the first big paper was in the Ensign in 1985. And I just had one date. It was the date of the resurrection of Christ, which is the most clear date of the Bible in his life. They didn't notice when he was born. It was a secret, but it was really known well when he was crucified and resurrected. And they gave that date in the Bible if people would just believe the Bible. And somewhere I noticed that when the Lord appeared in the Kirtland Temple in 1836, that was the best astronomical recurrence of the Easter of the Lord's resurrection, the best one in 5,000 years. And that seemed like it was worth a paper even in the Ensign, and it took 3 or 4 years to get it approved. But so at first I just started with one point, and then I realized that, wait a minute, if the Lord does that once, he might do something like that again. And at first I only had the Hebrew calendar. And then the Mayan was added, the sacred round, and then this Enoch calendar. And when all 3 of them, well, this very slide, the next slide we're looking at, 59 is still on the screen. So this is very much the order it was discovered. we already had the baptism on an earlier slide where it was, the baptism date was determined by the Hebrew calendar from the Day of Atonement. Oh, we haven't done that yet, but the date, Christ would do things on the right calendar date. The whole purpose of the law of Moses was to bring people to Christ. And it had symbolic, the Day of Atonement is the day to reconcile yourself with Christ, with the Lord. That's what baptism is all about. And it just was clear that he was baptized on the Day of Atonement. Well, when I start looking at the Enoch calendar, it comes out that when you do the Sunday and the Saturday stuff, I told you it's always on a Saturday. Well, now that's going to be the Feast of Tabernacles, 14 Autumn. And on the sacred round, it comes out 13 Water. So this is how it started. I just had a few dates in the life of Christ and 2 or 3 calendars, and they kept lining up on everything. And then one by one, other calendars were discovered. The Aztecs said that the life of Quetzalcoatl was all based on the Venus calendar. And I look at that, and lo and behold, he resurrects on the day that Venus resurrects. That's the very day that he resurrected. So one by one, all these other calendars were added. Now there's 16 calendars. And I think the most holy day in history is I haven't really got the full program working yet, but so far, it's the day of the resurrection, where it's like on 15 of those 16, and I'm not even counting the holy years, and I'm not counting the star calendars yet. The point is, every time a new calendar is discovered, everything lines up again,
Okay.
and that's how it got discovered.
That brings up another question about your sacred calendar calculations. I guess your program, you keep adding into it these additional calendars when you get time.
Right.
Will you ever have that program not have to use the old browser, the old
Yes,
JavaScript?
hooray. Yes, I just realized the other day how to do it. I will, now I don't know when this is happening. Right now I'm just finishing the star calendar, and I think it's really close to done, and I'm really close to a paper on all 64 days, all the stars, all the order. It's been a lot of work. But hopefully I will now change that program to work on a regular browser on a phone. And as long as phones still use JavaScript, which right now they all use JavaScript. Anyway, short answer is yes, I will be translating that program and publishing the program so other people can use it. I had been keeping...
The world runs on JavaScript.
Well, yeah, I think it does, but they said that about Java. Java was supposed to last forever, and now it's not even supported. When Java came out, I actually threw away my C++ compiler. I mean, I was so happy that here's a program that would run on any computer. And then Microsoft hated it and did all they could to destroy it, and then somehow they've succeeded. And people don't even use it anymore. And so that could happen. You just do the best you can with what you got. But anyway, I hope to have it all running just on JavaScript instead of Java, and very, very fast. I've got to, anyway, I see how to do it now. It's just a matter of doing it.
Well, we don't want to provide any pressure. You're doing a lot of good work. We appreciate it.
Well, the pressures, the Lord puts, there's pressure because there's time. We have a little interval of time now where we have time we can work and get things done, and that's going to go away. And so I'm really scrambling to get everything done that I can.
I imagine it's a lot of work to figure out where to insert the intercalations, those intervals for each one, because there's all of them are so unique.
Yes.
I have.
Yes, it's all a lot of work. The only time I get any inspiration or whatever you want to call it, revelation, inspiration, is when it's really hard and I get stuck, and I have to put in a certain amount of sweat equity before I can pray and say, look, I've really given it everything. And then I'll get a little hint, I've thought many times, I can't remember if I said this before, but it's I think everybody should think of this once in their life. So I'll say it. So this angel comes to Joseph Smith and says, here, dig up some plates, and there's a bunch of scribbling on it, and nobody knows this language, and you got to translate it. And Joseph Smith says, well, who wrote it? And the angel says, well, I wrote part of it. And Joseph could have said, well, you translate it. You know the language. You're talking to me in English. You obviously you can handle this. I'll take care of publishing it, but you should do it. And what's the angel going? He's going to say, it doesn't work that way. You've got to do it. And Joseph could say, why? And now I can tell you why I've had to do this myself. And that's because you can ask me any detailed question about any one of the cycles on any of the calendars. Why did you do this instead of that? And instead of me saying, duh, I don't know, the angel told me that, in fact, he actually did the whole thing. No, I can say, I can tell you exactly why, because I tried 10 different ways, and I can tell you why the other 9 didn't work.
Wow.
And that's why I had to do it myself. It took me a long time to realize that I know the principles now, and I've learned them the hard way.
Mm-hmm.
And Joseph Smith learned enough Egyptian that he could do the Book of Abraham when it showed up. So anyway, so the Lord expects us to do everything we can ourselves, is what I've decided. Well, we're coming down. If there aren't other questions, we can look at 2 or 3 of these last slides here, I think. And
I actually do have here. I think some more questions are coming though, but.
Okay. So we're on 59.
Ash has a question for you.
We already had a slide about Jesus's baptism.
Hey, John.
Yes.
Ash has a question for you really quick. Says, are you going to write a book ever?
Oh, the best I've got for a book, Ash, is the tutorials. This that we're looking at right now. You can take slides and send them to whatever place, and they'll make a book out of them. And it looks like it's going to have 2 volumes. The first volume will be everything before the star calendar, and it's got like 350 pages. And the second volume will be another 300 pages just on the star calendar, because it has a different star on every day. Each one has a story. I mean, it's amazing. So there's a couple of books right there that can be published. I hope to write. I started already writing a children's book. I figured the adults are lost mostly, but the kids could make it. And I got to make it easy enough. So I've started more than once to write a book for children, for homeschool on this subject. But every time I get going on the book, it turns out that I don't know enough. The work's not done yet, and I'd have to go back and be changing a lot of stuff. So the trouble is, right now, I'm still discovering things. And I hope to write both an introductory book for adults and for children. But what I am writing right now is this tutorial, and it's really forcing me to be logical and to make sure before a new concept is introduced that all the foundation has been covered in earlier slides. So,
and
anyway,
the website is a book of sorts.
Yeah, and well, yeah, but it's not. No, but it's not. It's a chronology of sorts of how it was discovered, and so there'll be the Venus calendar will be in 5 places. Update here. It's a work in progress. I've only got 2 or 3 articles here. Yeah, you can see one right here. What we're looking at is the best articles. On the best articles, the 4th one down, 12 steps from Christ to Adam. That's one article where I show how well, if you scroll down, you'll see a lot of pictures. If you scroll down through that article. And 12 steps to Adam. Now here they are over on the right. And how I established one date. See, look at that. The very first date, figure 1, is the let me move this thing over here. Is the resurrection anchor date. And then I get one more anchor date. And then I have 2, and then 3. And I go through 12 anchor dates. And the 12th one takes you all the way back to Adam. So it takes a series of 12 steps. And so that is one nice summary of the backbone of anchor dates of the entire chronology. And then I get other dates by filling in between. I've got one article I just wrote recently on the birth of Christ that somebody asked me. They said, because all I had until then was parts of 10 different articles on the birth of Christ. And now let's see scroll down to best articles and see if that one's listed. 7 zodiac clothes, creation and birth. No, I'll have to add that one because I think that'd be one of the best. I'll add that one to my list next time I update this. But anyway, I only have a few articles that give an overview. And almost all of the articles are a bunch of details for someone to figure out if I die. And they say, okay, we got to read all zillion pages of this to understand what's going on. And I've tried to put enough in there that somebody could get it all, but not for the average person to learn it. This would be like for the replacement of me to learn everything. So I need more overview articles, and that's what a book is about.
It's worth reading all of the zillion pages.
That had to be Gary that was speaking of. No one else would say that, but Gary, yeah, Gary is, he does really well. Gary actually understands it too. So there you go.
So we only have a few minutes left, John, but I wanted to revisit, and we've touched on it lightly, and Denver has also mentioned it too, that there's enough variance, meaning the month, that we have a leap year in some calendars, and that the Lord deliberately has a little bit of wiggle room in there. What is that all about? And is there anything explanation that you've ever given or offered of, why it's not precise and there is a leap year, for example?
Yes, I definitely have commented on that, and I have an answer for that. If the length of the year were 360 days, so every month had 30 days, and the moon went around once, and that would be so boring and so predictable and mostly boring. The Lord loves variety, and he loves mixing it up. The Hebrew calendar is the queen of mixing things up, because it'll be a month ahead and a month behind. You put in a whole leap month, not just leap days. And so you really get some nice variation, and yet spring is always in the spring. And then you have the 13 and the 7. And we talked, even here, I answered a question once. Those are both prime numbers. And so the Lord loves the prime numbers where they never repeat. And then you mix it up with 20, the number 20 also, which is, it's a long way from prime, being 4 times 2 times, 4 and 5 and all that. And then 60 throws in a 3. So the 60 has all of the other little numbers in it. Anyway, the short answer is variation. You look at the creations, look at all the brilliantly colored clownfish in the ocean, and you say, they could have all been gray. They could have all been silver. The variety in everything he's created. Look at how people, big and small and thin and fat and different color eyes, and they're all people. They're all in the basic model of a human, of God, in his image. But boy, he loves variation, such that there aren't any, they even say not even two snowflakes alike, let alone two people. So the short answer in 2 words, he loves variation. And yet he has it so it comes out. He is so cleverly done. The prayer I offer probably more than any other is, I try to get the Lord to laugh, and I'll just say, do you realize how clever you are? I bet you have no idea how truly clever you are, because this is amazing. It has all the variation. Anyway, stuff like that. We're past time, but that's it. He loves the variation. But these articles show that it's not a random thing. I have a whole article somewhere on how leap years testify of Christ. In other words, the very exact amount by which the year differs from 364 or from 360, that little tiny difference is a testimony. The lunar cycle is a big chiasm. It's a certain point when Christ comes, and the cycles after that and before that, he comes right at the center point. Anyway, I won't start the paper. Well, I'll let you go. It's we're over time. But Lord loves variation is my answer.
Okay. All right. Well, let's conclude then. Like always, I'll put it up on the, I'll get it put up on the Restoration Archive site, and look forward to talking to everyone next week. Thanks, John.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Talk soon. Bye.
Bye-bye.